Get ready, because you are not going to believe the devastating nuclear option I had to deploy when the tiny, power-hungry HOA in my supposedly free and clear ranch community tried to seize my family's land over a dispute about my mailbox paint color. That's right, a mailbox. They took it to court. They threatened foreclosure. They thought they had me cornered. But what they didn't know was that while they were busy sending petty passive-aggressive violation notices, I was quietly buying the holding company that owned the underlying land for the entire community, including their pristine little clubhouse and the lot Karen, the tyrannical HOA president, built her McMansion on. The moment I became their new landlord, their reign of terror ended. I didn't just win. I dissolved the HOA, seized their assets, and forced the entire board to literally bid for the right to keep their own homes. The fallout was total. Welcome back, drama addicts. If you've ever dealt with a petty tyrant who thinks a laminated rulebook gives them god-tier authority, this story is for you. The level of injustice here is off the charts, but the revenge? Oh, it's culinary grade. Smash that like button right now. Seriously, let's get this video to 1 million likes. Subscribe if you're new and hit the notification bell because you do not want to miss the next time a Karen gets a life-altering reality check. Let's dive in. My name is Jake, and I owned a beautiful, sprawling 5-acre ranch property in what was supposed to be a low-regulation, semi-rural subdivision called The Preserve. The Preserve was originally pitched as Freedom First, a place where ranching and personal choice took precedence. The only catch, and it was a small one, was a minimal homeowners association, or HOA, primarily designed to maintain the common access road. The annual fee was a joke, a couple $100, and for the first 10 years everything was fine. Enter Karen, or as we'll call her, the Empress of Enforced Aesthetics. Karen moved in with her husband, purchased the largest, gaudiest house at the entrance, and immediately leveraged a poorly attended annual meeting to seize the presidency of the HOA board. The rules immediately changed. She started small: mandatory specific colors for fencing, approved native species for landscaping, all the usual petty tyranny. My property, Rancho Viejito, was one of the older, more established parcels, and my mailbox, a sturdy, custom-welded steel box painted a vibrant, hand-mixed turquoise, suddenly became her personal nemesis. I received my first notice. Violation 4B, non-conforming mail receptacle color. Color must conform to the approved Desert Neutral palette, SW7521 Sand Dollar. I ignored it. It felt like a joke. Then came the second notice, certified mail, threatening a $50 fine per day if not corrected within 2 weeks. My reply was a handwritten note mailed back to her. This is a ranch, not a beige suburb. Go climb your decorative windmill. This, friends, was the moment the Empress declared war on Rancho Viejito. She upped the fine to $100 a day. I changed the color of the mailbox, all right. I painted it neon pink with bright yellow polka dots. The next day, a flatbed truck arrived, and 2 men, under the direction of a furious Karen standing on my property line, cut my mailbox post down and replaced it with a flimsy, approved beige box. They dared to trespass and destroy my private property. They'd escalated a paint color to felony vandalism, and they thought the HOA rulebook made them untouchable. This was no longer about a mailbox. It was about the fundamental right to my own property. The initial small-scale war had begun. The mailbox incident was just the opening salvo. I filed a police report for vandalism and trespass, which was dismissed because, and I quote the officer, "It's an HOA matter, sir, a civil dispute." Karen took that as a green light for total war. I immediately received a $5,000 special assessment fine for non-compliance, vandalism of approved community property, the replacement mailbox, and legal fees. The daily fines were still accruing. I consulted an attorney, a good old country lawyer named Frank, who informed me that while their actions were outrageous, the HOA's governing documents, poorly drafted years ago, gave them alarming power. They had the right, under state law, to place a lien on my property for outstanding fines and eventually to initiate foreclosure proceedings. Karen knew this. She didn't want the money. She wanted my ranch. She wanted my beautiful, non-conforming ranch out of her pristine, beige kingdom. The fines quickly ballooned. $5,000 became $10,000, then $20,000. She sent a letter stating that due to egregious and willful non-compliance, my water service, which ran through an HOA-maintained easement, would be temporarily suspended. They cut my water, in the middle of a 100-degree summer. I had livestock, goats, chickens, and 2 horses, that relied on that water. This was an immediate health and safety crisis. I had to pay a crew to truck in emergency water tanks just to keep my animals alive. The cost was crippling. I went to the HOA meeting, which was held in the small clubhouse Karen had just spent an obscene amount of HOA funds redecorating. I stood up, showed them pictures of my thirsty horses, and demanded they reinstate my water. Karen stood up, looked me dead in the eye, and with a sickening smirk announced, "Mr. Davies, the board has voted unanimously to petition the court for a judgment, placing a lien against Rancho Viejito for the full amount of $35,000 in outstanding fines and legal fees. Failure to pay within 30 days will initiate foreclosure proceedings. Your noncompliance is a threat to the character and stability of the preserve." Meeting adjourned. She then had a private security guard she'd hired escort me out. I was legally trapped, financially drained, and facing the loss of my family's land, all because of a turquoise mailbox and a power-crazed petty tyrant. Frank, my lawyer, looked grim. "Jake," he said, "these documents are solid. We can fight the validity of the fine, but that could take years and they'll have the property by then. They've gone nuclear. We're running out of options." The board, led by Karen, had just used bureaucratic tyranny to steal my home, and I felt utterly helpless. I left Frank's office with a sinking feeling, staring at the foreclosure notice, thinking, how am I going to fight this machine? That night, the foreclosure threat hung over me like a dark cloud, but helplessness gave way to pure, cold fury. Frank had mentioned one thing that sparked an idea: the original land ownership. The subdivision, the preserve, was not traditional freehold. The individual 5-acre lots, including mine and Karen's, were technically sold as 99-year leaseholds, governed by the HOA, but the underlying land, the roads, the easements, the common areas, and most importantly, the land under all the homes, was owned by a single, defunct holding company called Desert Vista Holdings, LLC. The original developer had set it up this way for tax purposes and then liquidated the LLC's management rights to the fledgling HOA, but never transferred the actual deed. The HOA paid a token annual fee to Desert Vista Holdings, which was now just a shell company owned by a single person. The elderly original developer, Mr. Harlan, who lived out of state and hadn't thought about the preserve in decades. Frank called Harlan. Harlan was delighted to get the call. He was old, needed cash, and had completely forgotten he still owned the underlying acreage. He was tired of signing the annual HOA paperwork. I didn't hesitate. Within 72 hours, I had a cashier's check for $250,000, pulled from my life savings, my retirement, everything, sitting in Mr. Harlan's bank account. I didn't buy the HOA. I bought the company that owned the dirt the HOA was sitting on. I became the sole owner of Desert Vista Holdings, LLC, and the master deed for the entire subdivision, including the common areas and the lot Karen's McMansion was built on. The paperwork was filed quietly and legally. The very next day, I had Frank send a simple 2-sentence letter printed on new Desert Vista Holdings letterhead. To the HOA board, effective immediately, Desert Vista Holdings LLC is exercising its right as landlord to terminate the master lease agreement with the Preserve Homeowners Association, citing breach of contract due to unlawful and criminal actions against a tenant, Mr. J. Davies. All outstanding debts and assets of the HOA are hereby seized by the landlord. I then sent a second letter, hand-delivered to Karen's immaculate front door. It was a 3-day eviction notice. Karen's reaction was priceless. She burst into Frank's office, screaming about illegal seizures and slander. Frank simply smiled and showed her the deed. She wasn't just losing the HOA presidency, she was about to lose her house, which sat on land I now owned. The tables had not just turned. They'd flipped and done a double backflip. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. News spread through the community like wildfire. The HOA board, which was suddenly comprised of tenants facing eviction from their own homes, imploded. The vice president resigned immediately and called me to apologize, claiming Karen had misled them. Karen, however, was in pure denial. She tried to rally the community, holding a desperate meeting in the now illegal clubhouse, claiming I was a rogue land grabber. I showed up not as a homeowner, but as the landlord. I served the entire board with formal notices, not eviction notices for them, but notices detailing the immediate dissolution of the HOA, the seizure of all HOA funds, which were now used to reimburse me for my legal fees and the emergency water costs, and the cancellation of all existing leasehold agreements. But the real sweet revenge was what came next. I didn't just evict them. I was going to make them pay for their hubris. I canceled the old 99-year lease structure and announced a new plan for the entire community, one that guaranteed actual freehold ownership forever, the very thing everyone actually wanted. But they had to buy the land under their house first. I scheduled a private mandatory auction for all existing homeowners, including the now-defunct board. The item up for bid was the freehold deed to the specific lot their house sat on. The starting price for each 5-acre lot? The original foreclosure amount Karen had slapped on my house, $35,000. Karen and her husband were first up. They looked pale and desperate. They had spent hundreds of thousands building their architectural monstrosity, but now they had to bid against the other board members just to keep it. The bidding started low, but the tension was thick. Karen, now a defeated, red-faced former empress, had to swallow her pride and bid higher and higher. They secured their lot, but only after a humiliating public bidding war, costing them over $120,000, a tidy profit for me, which I promptly used to cover my initial investment. The rest of the board members went through the same humiliation. I got my money back, the community got true freehold ownership, and the tyrants had to literally buy their homes back from the man they tried to bankrupt and kick out over a turquoise mailbox. With the community now composed of true freehold owners, the HOA was permanently dissolved, and the covenants were replaced with a simple, common-sense road maintenance agreement. Voluntary, non-punitive, and with no authority over aesthetics. Karen and her husband stayed, but they were social pariahs, their reign of terror ending in a single, self-inflicted financial disaster. But the final nail in the coffin was reserved for the clubhouse. I now owned the clubhouse and its lot. That facility, which Karen had redecorated with my HOA dues, was the last symbol of her failed empire. I decided to make one final definitive statement. I sold the clubhouse and the adjacent empty lot to a local goat farmer. His plan? To convert the clubhouse into a hay barn and the surrounding land into a certified commercial goat dairy. He put up a huge sign on the main road, right where Karen's pretentious The Preserve monument used to be, advertising fresh goat milk and artisan cheeses. And yes, he painted his massive new barn, the former clubhouse, an outrageous, eye-blinding turquoise. My original mailbox, which I had retrieved and welded back onto a new steel post, was now prominently displayed next to the goat dairy sign. Every morning, Karen had to drive past the very symbol of her defeat, the turquoise barn, and the mailbox that started it all, on her way out of the community she once ruled. The ranch was safe. The community was free. The villain was defeated, financially humbled, and forced to live with the permanent, daily, highly aesthetic reminder of her spectacular, nuclear downfall. Justice had been served, 5 glorious free-range acres at a time. What an absolute saga. Did you believe how quickly she went from powerful HOA president to a woman begging to keep her own home? Let me know in the comments what the most satisfying part of this revenge was. The eviction notice, the auction, or the turquoise goat barn? I'm leaning towards the goat barn. Don't forget to whiz-mash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you catch all the next HOA meltdowns, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out and check your deeds.